What is up, my people? My name is Arjuneus. Welcome back to the Mind Over Meat podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me, Vivian.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm a vegan chef.
What got you into veganism and how did that journey start?
So veganism started for me through my grandmother. She was a Mahayana Buddhist nun, and she would come and visit us from the temple once a week and stay with us for days. And growing up, my parents were meat eaters, and so I was also brought up that way. But there was something very special about visiting my grandma in the temple and seeing her at home. I asked her why she was practicing veganism, and she would always talk about how we needed to respect sentient beings. And it didn't really fully click for me until 10 years ago. So yeah, that's kind of where it started.
So was there a specific piece of information as you were hearing your words of wisdom from your grandma about treating animals with respect? Was it a documentary you saw, or a video, or it was just your own thought process that led you to veganism?
Yeah, just listening to grandma when she would come home. Through time though, practicing yoga, I feel like when you're practicing meditation, it kind of opens up your mind in different ways, and you become more sensitive to energies, and you just pay attention a little bit more to little details like this animal is a person. You probably shouldn't kill it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, it's interesting because some people who are vegetarian will say that by being a vegetarian, we're not killing animals, but veganism is extreme. So were you able to directly draw the line, but okay, veganism is completely not killing animals and vegetarianism is a different level? Or were you just it clicked from the beginning that you kind of knew that veganism is a way to avoid?
For some reason, I feel like when it comes down to this topic, there's a kind of dissonance that happens in the mind. It only really comes into consciousness or fruition when you're actually doing research or really contemplating and thinking about these things. Because for me, vegetarianism and veganism were one thing up until I was about, let's say 20 years old.
Hop in my story. So at the age of 20 is when I actually realized that vegan is the new vegetarian. I didn't want to go vegan, but I knew it was the right thing to do in order to stay true to my ideals.
Grandma was vegan, and traditionally Vietnamese cooking is vegan. We don't use dairy products in our food. So that was kind of what I was brought up with. And then as I grew up and was practicing vegetarianism, my body kind of just rejected the dairy, and
Veganism more you kind of felt it energetically, the diet just felt more in alignment with your the way you experience energies of animals and experience the energies of food? Or is
I wish I was that sensitive to energy. It was more so just a coming of consciousness to why my grandmother was vegan. Dairy for me didn't seem like it was the wrong thing until I started
doing a bunch of drugs and becoming conscious.
Sure, I guess.
Was it just pure just meditation? You were able to just sit down and kind of come to your own actualization? Or were you studying anything, reading anything?
Yes, I was studying yoga, and in yoga, there's also the limbs of yoga. There's Patanjali's Yoga Sutras that talks about the yamas and the niyamas.
Dude, that's so funny because literally episode 1, Gabriel was talking about this exact same thing.
I totally just butchered it though. I was slurring my words. Anyway, so the yamas and the niyamas, studying that and just going deeper into yogic philosophy, it just made more and more sense to continue on in this way. And then as we kind of chisel ourselves energetically or consciously, these things just kind of make more sense.
Yeah. It's interesting because I totally agree with you, but there's so many people that are in this I guess community of feeling energies and crystals, healing, the whole
Are they really
occult.
feeling it though?
Exactly. So it's
most of them are meat eaters.
Yeah. So that's my question. It's there's so many meat eaters in this community, but I feel there is a contingent of people that are kind of feeling it enough to kind of connect the dots with veganism. So for someone who might be, I don't know, interested in veganism that's in this community, what would you say is kind of the tipping point or something that would be worth for them to consider exploring to kind of come to the same actualization that you had with food and lifestyle?
I mean, my experience was different. I can only suggest to watch videos of animals in these farms and how they're treated, and that naturally will kind of spark more empathy in you or more consciousness in what you're already practicing. Because ultimately it's a direction and it's a trajectory that we're on, and so everyone goes at their own pace. You're not going to like immediately wake up one day and be totally conscious of all the horrors that are going on. So yeah, I would suggest looking into these documentaries like What the Health, for example, kind of going through the health aspect of why veganism is good for you. And then slowly after that, you'll kind of naturally find your way to the understanding of respecting and protecting sentient beings.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I'm hearing a lot of intersectional in the sense that they're trying to like show like how the health aspect of veganism is directly connected with the ethical aspect, which is directly connected with like the environment. Mm-hmm. So what was it all kind of just like it all clicked together that like it's all connected, or was it like first I'm going to start with like my health and then I'm going to make my way to finding out about the animal issue?
I went in really hardcore. It was more about if I want to go down this yogic path and I want to follow in the footsteps of my grandmother, then I need to just do it gung-ho cold turkey and just go vegan.
Yeah.
And it made more and more sense as I progressed through my journey and finding different scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita. So for me, veganism is not only, about the animals. It's about respecting the prana or the energy and the food that we're taking, because plants also are a life force. They're also alive and they're conscious. And in the Bhagavad Gita, for me and my yogic path, it's about canceling out as much karmic crap that you can load on for yourself. So you're familiar with Bhagavad Gita, right?
I'm named after Arjuna, so I have to be familiar with it by default.
My practice is more so the consciousness of all the energy also within the plants that we're basically like sacrificing for our own health and for our well-being, and also offering them back to the divine so that everything that's used in the process is sanctified.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's just like a way of like having the most respectful way of going about consuming in the world and having like I guess less of a carbon footprint as they talk about today.
And a karmic footprint.
Karmic and carbon footprint. Yeah. And arguably they're kind of also intertwined with each other. So yeah, I think on the spiritual plane, it translates to having like the least amount of karmic footprint, whereas like over here, like in the West, we're mostly concerned with the carbon footprint. Like they're concerned about the carbon footprint in flying, but not with like food. And so like what do you do now, like as like a cook?
It basically was a hobby turned career. The universe kind of just made it happen for me in that way, and I feel really honored and grateful that I get to be of service to people in this way. Just preparing vegan meals for people, helping their health. Helping just the betterment of them as a person. And then I can also implement whatever tools that I've learned through my yogic practices and meditation as a full experience for my clients. So I feel really grateful that that's what I'm able to do.
So do you do like cooking courses or like classes for your clients, or like how does that work? Or are you like a private chef?
Yeah, I'm a private chef. I also do online cooking classes. I'm currently working on an online cooking course for people that aren't within the LA vicinity who want to learn how to cook things that I make. So, yeah.
You have like a very interesting vibe to it, really aesthetic. Could you explain like a little like how you came to that like style?
What style do you mean?
The seductive spices of Southeast Asia will have your mouth watering for more.
Khao Soi, a shared seductive classic that's traditional to Thailand, Laos, and Burma. This golden spice coconut cream noodle soup is a warm, comforting embrace.
Seems like you're trying to create like a movie or something.
Life is a movie. I feel like the story of food and the story of spices is a story that should be known of and also remembered and revered. For me and my practice, I'm a total Southeast Asian, South Asian Vedic culture obsessed person. Yeah. So I love to see the interconnectedness of the symbiotic relationship between South Asia and Southeast Asia. And honestly, it was through my grandmother that really sparked this interest, because she was practicing Buddhism, and my journey into actually my whole yogic practice was through this first trip to Vietnam that I went on after I left high school. went to go and look for my ancestry, and then slowly ended up in Cambodia. And in Cambodia, I realized that India had played a huge part in our culture in Vietnam. And from there, I went to India, and all of this stuff just totally fascinated me. So within spirituality, there's also food and culture, social activism, and the social, very peaceful social transformations that came from India that were planted in Southeast Asia back in like the 1st century. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool. So like what like specifically, like if you had to pick, I'm sure there's like dozens of things, but like what was like one of the highlights that you learned that had like an influence on like food and culture that you think is like very like that just kind of like wowed you to where you're just like, all right, I'm gonna create content with this type of focus on like Southeast Asia and South Asia?
It's really just my love for food and the fact that I have found vegan food in the West to be so bland and boring.
Yeah.
I mean, you understand, you're Indian.
Dude, I don't even trust American food at this point. Like
Yeah.
the amount of stuff they put in there, it's just like, dude, like it's nasty.
It's still sustenance for us, but it's just lacking, it's lacking flavor, it's lacking culture. Also, vegan processed food is the worst. I prefer not to cook with it at all. So I love
Like raw
the
foods.
challenge of finding ways to veganize traditional recipes of Southeast Asia. And also, of course, Indian food is my favorite. So using those spices and then bringing it into my food is one of my favorite things to do. So
That's pretty cool. So are you like do you like spices because of like the flavor? Like, because you mentioned something about the story of the spices. It sounds like Dune, you know, like have you seen Dune where they're
I
like,
love Dune. Any of those types of like post-apocalyptic movies, that's my shit.
yeah. So like what's like the story? Is this like, you know, like he who controls the spices controls all type of deal, or like what are we talking about?
No, it's okay. Let's start with the maritime trade routes and why I'm so obsessed with the symbiotic relationship of Southeast Asia and South Asia. A lot of the spices that we use in South Asian food and Southeast Asian food, they've been shared back and forth from India and Southeast Asia for centuries, and they all came through the maritime trade routes. A lot of the culture of both places through like art, architecture, and food and culture, those were the main kind of pillars that they shared and intermingled with each other. So it's just the stories behind the spices and how they're used in different regions through Southeast Asia and South Asia that really fascinate me, because you can cook one spice in 10 different ways.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I nerd out on everything.
Yeah, and like they heal too, like in different ways. Like there's all these different properties. Like turmeric is getting so big over here because of its like anti-inflammatory properties. So it is interesting to see like how they all have like their own unique personality, I guess. And there's just so many to like experiment with. And it's interesting because like when I have a lot of like Latino friends, they have like their own like variations of spices like down here. So it's interesting to see like how on a different part of like, you know, the world, like spices are still a huge thing.
Spices, they make your food, they turn your food into alchemical, medicinal elixirs.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people don't see it that way, but that's really what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. I actually had read like a while back that like apparently you can't taste spices because it touches your pain receptors.
Really?
Yeah, so apparently like when you have a spice, you're not tasting it. It's hitting your pain receptors in different ways that makes you think that you're tasting it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Can you send me that?
yeah, I could send that to you. You're like, I don't believe it. I don't believe this guy. Do you have like a lot of vegan friends, or like are you in like a big non-vegan circle or family, and like how do you like kind of like deal with that?
Surprisingly, outside of my temple community, I don't really have many vegan friends.
You're the lone wolf.
In most of my circles, yeah.
And like, do you feel like it's like exhausting to like be the only vegan, or do you think like everyone's like pretty like cool with it, or like
It was exhausting in the beginning. A lot of my friendships now have been like decades long, so everyone's very respectful. I don't have to deal with all the crap that comes with being made fun of for being vegan or boring.
Yeah. Have you ever like dated like a non-vegan and they just gave you like a bunch of shit for being a vegan, or like how does that work?
Heck no. Why would I ever date someone that's like that?
You would never date a non-vegan?
For the last 10 years, I've been kind of hardcore with only dating vegans. I would be a little bit more lenient sometimes if they were vegetarian, but yeah, it's only been vegans for 10 years up until recently, which was a surprise to me.
Non-vegans will say like, oh, we'll go vegan like if we like, date or something. Would you ever like let that slide?
I did have a period where I would put them in an incubation time because if we're exchanging intimately, you know, what you put in your body, it comes out through your pores. It's like in your bodily fluids. You know, you don't want to be making out with someone that has dead flesh in their stomach. I mean, for me at least, because just even imagining that, it would freak me out. So I would put them through like 3-month incubation periods where they'd have to detox and go vegan, which probably was a mistake. I probably shouldn't have done that at all because obviously the relationships didn't work out.
You tell them like, all right,
yes,
I'm gonna put you in an incubation period, and once you pass this, then you can apply to be my boyfriend or whatever.
They were down.
So they were down. Like you just tell them like, yo, you're gonna be in this incubation period for about 3 months.
Yes, you know,
survive.
They were pursuing for a while, and I was like, you know what? If you really are serious,
go in the incubator.
Go vegan.
I think a lot of vegans are on the same page, but I know like some people do struggle with it because they're like in communities where they're like the only vegan. So do you have like any advice? Well, I guess your incubator is the method, it's the advice.
It's not good advice, guys. You want to be with someone either accepting them for who they are from the beginning or just don't be with them at all. Because if they're not on the same page with you from the beginning, it's just not going to be worth it in the end. There's always going to be problems. So
speaking of problems, so I know you do like a lot of like healing stuff, like you have like healing rods and stuff like that. So how does that like kind of tie in with veganism? Like did you kind of discover that?
That was before my whole veganism journey started. It's just, I'm all about whole health. I'm all about clearing energetic debris and bettering myself and growing in all different ways. So the rods that I make are just an extension of that. It's just something fun to make, and I like playing with power tools.
Do you have like a friend group that you kind of like do like these, because I know it's very common for people to like have like healing groups where like they might be healing through sounds, you know, like with the rims or something, and they all just like sit in a group and do it. Have you done it before?
I've probably done that hundreds of times at this point.
Yeah, so do you like do it with like your friends, or like do you just do it by yourself? Just
for me, it's just mantra meditation, and my practice is very simple now. I'm less, you know, ethereal and energetic. Now I feel like I want to ground more into my body, so I started weightlifting and doing more locomotion, animal flow type of stuff, just to ground into the earth a little bit more. My experience now is less woo-woo, and it's more down to earth and in my body, expressing my human a bit more.
So have you felt like a difference in being a vegan after 10 years? Do you think like your diet had an influence on like where you are now and like how you got into healing?
Totally.
Yeah? Yeah.
I feel like going vegan has really made me more sensitive to just other people than myself.
Like other people, like as in like their vibrations, their emotions, like
all of it. It's helped me become more compassionate and more empathetic. Of course, I have my own issues and I get upset and I can get raging upset sometimes, but I find that, you know, through the last 10 years of practicing nonviolence, ahimsa, it's definitely kind of washed away whatever energetic residue I have that keep me from being more loving or more in my heart with my surroundings and with people that I meet.
Right.
Yeah.
So for someone that doesn't know anything about like ahimsa, what would be your response to like why that's like important? Because some people might be so disconnected that they'll say, oh, you know, who cares about animals? Like we have other problems to worry about. Like why is ahimsa like important to you?
I think ahimsa stretches far beyond even just veganism. It's just understanding that working towards living a non-violent life in every which way possible that you can administer into your life will be beneficial for you in the long run, because what it's working on is, it's kind of like massaging the heart a little bit and massaging the consciousness and aligning your heart and your mind together so that you can actually live your life as an embodied, wholesome, kind person. And sure, we have all of our own crap, but you know, it's a nice practice.
Yeah, I feel it. So it's basically leveling up like yourself consciously and like how you kind of just, I guess, vibrate in the world, aka just do a bunch of drugs.
I mean, the psilocybin did it for me for sure. But then there's the work that comes after that. It's like getting shot off on a rocket, and then when you come back down, you kind of have to,
Yeah, you kind of
find the way to embody it.
You have to kind of have direction before doing it. You can't just do it because like, oh yeah, let's get fucked up. It's more like you have to kind of use it as a tool, I guess, is what like I hear people say a lot, instead of just using it as in like expecting it to give you like the answer.
Yeah, I feel like life, or just spiritual life, it's a journey and it's a trajectory that you're on, and you just have to take it one day at a time and chisel away.
Yeah, that's true. Alrighty, well, thank you so much for coming to my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about it, and I will see you next time. Chaos out.
Do you think we had some nuggets that you can use? You're going to use the incubator shit, huh?